One of the things that I'm happiest about with my life, one of the things that I pride myself when I look back on throughout my whole life about is I have never been afraid to defy convention. I've never been afraid to do things differently than other people. I had a neat experience tonight that reminded me of why that's so important. I went, after work today, I went to a client's house, like a new client, to check out a project that was potentially coming up. And I walked into this guy's yard and immediately I was blown away by the yard that I walked into. I mean, from the front it didn't look like anything special. It was just your typical backyard here in Calgary. And I've walked into a lot of backyards in my life. You know, long before I was a landscaper, I was going around to landscape sites with people when I was just a little kid. So I've seen thousands of backyards, maybe more. And I walked into this backyard and I was immediately blown away because it was the most intricate, personalized yard I'd ever seen in my life. I was with this guy. He was a really cool old guy. He's 81 years old, and immediately I looked and he had, all throughout the backyard, he had a garden railway. Now, I've been in the landscape industry for 16 years, give or take a little bit. I've walked into, like I said, thousands of backyards in my lifetime, and never, at least in the Calgary area, because of our climate, really, have I ever walked into a yard with a model train in it. It was so cool. And I told him right away, I said, Norm, this is the neatest yard I've ever walked into. Like, this is so cool. And we had a conversation, but then he started pointing out little things about the railway, like the bridge that he and his son had built, and the little ornaments and things that were carved out of driftwood that he picked up on a trip up the Sunshine Coast. And there was all these little things, these little details that I hadn't noticed immediately that he pointed out to me, and he was so proud of. And he talked for probably close to an hour just telling me the stories of all the interesting things in his yard. And it got me thinking about a lot about living unconventionally. I saw in this guy a man who had lived a happy life and who was happy with his life now, and he was just absolutely thrilled to tell me the stories of his life. And he told me about his business and about his kids and all this stuff, and he was just so happy and proud of everything. And I was looking at the model railway in his yard, and I was thinking, you know, I don't see this too often, and I know it's done. Some people do have them, but it's really uncommon. And all the little details he had in this little model railway were uncommon. And then I started listening to his stories, and I realized everything about how he lived was uncommon. And that's why I liked this guy. Is he was willing to live an unconventional life. He was willing to do things differently without fear of being ridiculed or without worrying about what other people might think. He was just living his life his way on his terms. And I think that's so cool because, like I said at the beginning, that's one of the things that I'm most proud of about myself. It's one of the things that I'm happiest about the way that I've chosen to live my life, is that I have not done anything the way anybody thought I should. And partly because I'm a bit contrarian, I'm proud of that, but also partly because it's gotten me some really cool results that are very uncommon results. And you know, if you want results that other people don't get, you have to do things that other people don't do. And that doesn't necessarily mean putting in the effort to running a business, although that's part of it. There's other things, you know, and being willing to do things that other people don't do. You know, I think of my own life, you know, it's very rare that I wear shoes unless I'm legally obligated to for safety reasons or social convention. You know, and even social convention, I push it a lot. I've given talks on stage to Toastmasters at meetings where I didn't know anybody and didn't know if it was acceptable in bare feet. You know, I've participated in speaking contests wearing a kilt just for the heck of it. Like, I am not afraid to do things uncommonly, and I love it because it gives me a lot of great stories. It sets me apart from other people. You know, I'm one of the most memorable people a lot of people know. I can't say a lot of people, but many of my friends consider me one of the most memorable and unique people they know, because I just do all kinds of crazy things, and I'm willing to go against the grain and do things differently. And even the way I work, you know, I run a landscaping company that doesn't work like crazy hours all summer to try to make up lost time for the winter. I understand that you can actually work at a reasonable pace and still be profitable, and it's showed up very well. And everything I do, my living situation currently is incredibly unconventional, and yet it works for me. I love it. And this guy Norm had lived his life the same way, and he was just so happy, and he was so fulfilled, and just so proud of all his accomplishments, and to tell me about everything that he had done. And it got me thinking, like, so many people, and I think about the thousands of yards I've walked into that were the same. You know, they all had some version of the same thing. They had the patio furniture, they had the patio, they had the flat grass, they had the nice plants. They were all some version of the same, and it got me thinking, are those yards actually the backyards that those people wanted? Or were they the backyards that they thought everybody else thought they should have? You know, the same goes with cars. You know, how many people are driving a car because somebody else thinks that that's a cool car for them to have? Or how many people have a job that they don't want because somebody else thinks that that's the job they should have? You know, we all, and I do it too, and I'm sure Norm did it too throughout his life at various times. We all get sucked in to living life within the conventions once in a while. We all get sucked into living a life that other people think we should be living, and it makes us create these rules about how we should exist, and these rules about the way the world works, and these ideas about what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. And you know what? The only bad idea is not living full out. The only really truly bad idea is not living truly to your own self. I mean, sure, you might argue there are some pretty bad ideas out there, but ultimately and truly, the only way you can fail in life is to not live true to you. You know, you can make mistakes, you can mess things up, you can lose money, you can do all that kind of stuff, but as long as you're living true to yourself and you're being generally a good person, you're gonna get through. It doesn't matter what comes up. You'll be able to deal with it. But if you live a life that's really, truly, honestly yours, and you do the things that interest you, and you get excited about the things that excite you, you'll be the kind of person that at the end of your life, you're very proud to look back on it. You'll be the kind of person who looks back or who has some young 30-something landscaper come into his backyard and you talk his ear off with stories about your life, and he loves that you did it because your life seemed so fascinating and so interesting, and you were so fulfilled by it. And I just think that, you know, the older I get, and the more I watch people live conventional lives, and the more I watch the stress that's come up in people living conventional lives, and the more I see all of this kind of stuff, the more I think the key to real fulfillment and happiness is to live an unconventional life. You know, the key to real fulfillment and happiness is to do the things that make you happy, not the things that other people think you should do. I've been thinking about that more and more and more lately as I've been making some decisions and doing some things and thinking about some stuff that is very unconventional and could be radically life-changing for me if I do decide to do what I'm thinking about. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that most of my resistance is convention. Most of my resistance is what is the world going to think. Most of my resistance is for reasons other than my own self. And the more I think about that, the more I think like that's a good recipe for unhappiness. It's a good recipe for lack of fulfillment, is to live a life based on what other people think you should be doing. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting, and I thought, you know, if there's ever anything that you want to do but you don't do it because you're worried about what somebody else might think, or you're worried about what the world thinks of you, remember that everybody else is so wrapped up in their own life that you barely exist to them. You know, you're a tiny little blip on their radar screen, and that's okay. That's actually a very good thing, because it means that you can do whatever the hell you want without fear of their judgment, because ultimately, who cares what they think? They don't know what you know. So live your life your way, do the things that interest you, and don't wait. You know, don't get to the end of your life and look back and realize that you lived somebody else's life for 60 years and now you wish you could live your own, because really you get one shot at this. So live interesting, live unconventionally, and live true to yourself, because I think in the long run, I think that's gonna make you happier. I'm quite convinced that that's gonna make me happier. I can already feel it. So anyway, just some thoughts I wanted to share. Have a great evening. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. And if you got some value out of this video, please, please, please do tell your friends. It helps me immensely to get this message out and to help other people as well. So thank you very much, and I'll speak with you again very soon.